brought to you by Gamivo.com. Get the cheapest game time on the market, as well as other Warcraft products. Check out the link in the description below. So, in the previous video, I've talked about what is the purpose of Demon Hunters after Legion, but in this one, I thought I would expand more on whether they're still created, and if they even can be in the first place. We know that the ritual is incredibly brutal, and is a sacrifice unlike none other. Still, after Legion, could we create Demon Hunters, or will they eventually just go extinct? The actual Demon Hunter ritual was best explained in the Illidan novel. While Illidan was the first ever Demon Hunter created during the War of the Ancients, and there were a few more around that time, the reality is that almost all Demon Hunters were created just a bit before the Burning Crusade on Outland. All were Night Elves and Blood Elves that followed Illidan or that found him later. This, however, was not your regular warrior training that they search for. This was a ritual in the full sense of that word. It began with slaying a demon, eating its heart and drinking its blood. Then the spirit of the demon created a bond with the hunter, and this would not be a very pleasant bond. First, from the Fel power they would mutate, gain scales, horns and claws, pretty unpredictably, as well as Fel is unstable, which causes a decent amount of visual diversity between the demon hunters. Then the real transformation would begin with the mind. The demon would present them with such terrible visions that would make them nearly go insane and would cause them to tear out their own eyes and fall into a coma most of the time. Here is where many demon hunters fail, as only 1 in 5 survive and actually become demon hunters. The rest usually either ends their lives or is completely overwhelmed by Fel. For those that survive, as a demon hunter awakens, his spectral sight sets in, they are given tattoos that control their inner demon, and now they get to actual training and tactics. However, the training really doesn't matter all that much, as by this point they have become so much more powerful than they were in the past, with superhuman reflexes and speed. Even though they possess the special tattoos, they still have that demon voice within their head that they constantly have to battle. There were occasions where years later demon hunters could eventually just take no more and they would be completely overwhelmed. This is also why it is so risky to utilize the metamorphosis form, because as much as it empowers them, it also creates the proportional dissonance between the mortal and the inner demon. So obviously, as you can see, this is an incredibly tortured existence. In fact, it is very similar to Arthas's Death Knights with their inner sadistic voice. No one would willingly, unless they had literally no other choice, do this to themselves, as they paid an incredibly high price for their new gained powers. Still, their sacrifices were incredibly important, as they played a crucial role in the fight against the Legion that we ultimately defeated. As I mentioned in the previous video, we don't really know the current purpose of Demon Hunters and what they're doing right now after they fulfilled their ultimate goal by defeating Sargeras, but there are some bits of information in regards to whether they can still be created, the actual technicalities of the ritual. First, it is important to know that Demon Hunters are an incredibly small order that is really blown way out of proportion in game. The reality is that at their peak, they were most likely in the hundreds and not like literally every third person in any major hub. As far as we know, almost all of the current hunters were created by Illidan around the same time, although there were some that were trained a bit later on, but it is safe to say that most of the training was done around the same time period. Now, technically, I really don't see why we can't create Demon Hunters again. Unlike Death Knights that require strict knowledge of necromancy to be created, and most likely knowledge of the Shadowlands as well, what creation of a Demon Hunter boils down to is eating a demon. Anyone can do that. That is what starts it, and then you just need someone to control the process, and of course with the knowledge of creating those tattoos. While many Demon Hunters fell in the previous wars, there are no doubt still many left that could definitely replicate this process. So, well, I'd say yes, we can still create a Demon Hunter. The only two problems are finding someone that would be willing to do it, and even having the motivation to do so. My thoughts are that Demon Hunters are now the Warcraft Witchers that are hunting the remnants of the demons, but as there is no longer a looming threat going around with Sargeras, I don't see why why someone would want to willingly expose themselves to this tortured existence. There are many other ways to gain power, and while demon hunters are very powerful, the crux of their power is their specialization against a legion, which really wouldn't make much sense at this point. What I can see in the future is avoid Demon Hunter. If you ever get invaded by the Void Lords, it is possible that Demon Hunters could adjust the ritual to become a Void Hunter. There are many parallels between Shadow and Fel that could easily connect them. That way, Demon, or should I say Void Hunter, creation process could begin again, and we might get a new batch of Void Hunters. However, at the current state, I would say yes, it is technically possible to create Demon Hunters, but there just isn't any motivation or reason to do so. Thank you for watching. Check out what is the future of the Scourge by clicking on the screen, and check out my second channel, Doran's Academy, for videos on real world history and science. See you next time.